Yo.
anomalous species actually identified it.
Oh my gosh.
And
Noise
suppression
suppression
severe water damage
may have saved the mic in the stream.
If you're at the point where there are mushrooms bursting,
Pretty insane.
It's like,
what else could be going wrong? You might want to check for mold.
Let's try that out. Let's try this out.
Part of it, and yeah.
Cool, Manhattan, huh? Dude, so obviously I've been a fan of yours and your show for a very, very long time. But it wasn't until a couple years ago that I made the connection between you and your dad. Because I was also a huge fan of your dad's documentaries. Like, and my mind was blown. I was like, no way. That's incredible. I mean, like, some of those documentaries that he does, like, the way he does documentaries is so unique. And so, like, he just has a very, very cool way of, like, the cinematography that he does, where he has the interviewers talk directly down the barrel of the camera.
Sure.
You know how he interviews them, like, right?
Is the mic freaking out a bit? How's the mic?
I think Mr. Death. I think he did it during Mr. Death, where all of the interviews, like, typically people when they're doing interviews, they're looking to the side, right, to like somebody talking to them. But he has this unique way of having people look straight down the barrel of the camera, or having multiple.
The
like,
Interatron is what it's
called.
called.
The Interatron. Yes, I forgot. That's what it's called. Yeah.
A name coined by my mother. Yeah.
Oh, your mom made that up.
Yeah.
That's so cool, man.
Yeah.
Some of those stories, like the Mr. Death story, is just so fucking bananas.
What's this is? Wow.
It is really bananas.
Yeah.
It's a great.
Why is it like
That's
this?
a great film, I think.
I think so too.
I really love that film.
What the fuck is this?
I don't really hear people talk about it very much, but I think it's like
Nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
And whenever I bring it up to people, they've never heard of it.
It's a bad name.
Ew.
I think it's part of has a forgettable name, and the original name was supposed to be called Honeymoon in Auschwitz, but they thought that was too controversial or something, so it was changed to Mr. Death. That's sort of a forgettable name, but it's an amazing documentary.
Yeah. So the guy Fred's hypothesis at the end of it, some guy, the guy who was involved in some trial, basically got Fred to testify for him that the gas chambers in Germany like couldn't have been gas chambers, and like that was used like to, I don't know, that ended up being like this weird side road that the whole documentary took at the very end that you weren't expecting. And it seems like your dad had to do a lot of damage control with that when they were promoting the documentary.
No.
No?
I don't think that's a correct interpretation. I mean, that was the subject of the documentary was the association between Lucher's pseudoscientific beliefs and how this fed into his delusions and his self-deception. And I think it was a kind of, it wasn't as if like there was some kind of gotcha moment, like he was only interviewing him. I mean, the subject of the documentary is his involvement with Zundel, and there's an extensive interview with an analytical chemist in the documentary dissecting why his testing of the Auschwitz gas chambers was methodologically flawed.
Right, he were just like putting like dust in bags, in like Ziploc bags, and flying across the world to a chemistry lab.
Right, and this is I think it actually is a very important lesson, and I say this just because this was the subject of the documentary. This wasn't.
Yo, what's up, Rev? How are you, man?
Talking to a guy who was doing electric chair repair, and then
What is up, Rev?
I've been interested in him for that reason. Although I actually think he probably did know about the association with Zundel originally.
Oh, he knew about that in the beginning. I got the impression that he didn't find that out until like after they were in production. Could be that was a while ago when I watched it. So.
I would expect not, but I don't remember because all this was made when I was a child.
Right.
But yeah, the story for those that aren't aware is that there was this untrained, uncredentialed electric chair repairman who had seemingly done a decent job designing electric
That's good, man.
chairs. There wasn't, as far as I know, any major instances of his designs failing in a way that caused some kind of terrible suffering or something like that, to the best of my knowledge. I don't have like an encyclopedic knowledge of the results of Lucher's execution device designs, but he had gotten embroiled in this quest to demonstrate that the Holocaust didn't really happen.
Right.
And he was contracted as a sort of scientist, despite having no training in chemistry, to collect samples from the interior of the gas chamber in Auschwitz and have them chemically analyzed. But the issue is that in addition to these samples being at that point probably at least a half century old, one wouldn't expect any of like hydrogen cyanide is very volatile. So that's the first issue, is that this is not something that you would expect to remain on the surface for even, I would imagine, months, let alone decades. Well, it's pretty much a gas. Yeah, that was how it was used in the gas chambers. Right. That's why there were gas chambers. Yeah.
Right.
So because it is a volatile substance, it doesn't have a tendency to deposit on surfaces. I think the idea there was that there was like a Prussian blue type cyanide complex that would have been detected, but again, the samples were diluted because you wouldn't expect this to penetrate more than like a fraction of a millimeter into the chamber wall, and he was chiseling off huge pieces of so that's,
it was very crude the way he was taking the samples.
Right. So it's sort of a portrait of self-deception.
Yes.
And the danger of pseudoscientific inquiry.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, one of the most profound things about that documentary that I noticed was he was explaining after the Bureau of Prisons got him to repair the electric chair, then said, hey, maybe you can come up with these other operations or these other ways of executing people with the like lethal injections, and they even did gas chambers, I think, in the U.S. for the Bureau of Prisons and all kinds of other ways of doing it. He was explaining, like, it is really difficult to kill people. He's like, it's not that easy. It's not as easy as you would imagine. Because there was a lot of people that weren't dying, that were just getting tortured or like getting, put in a vegetative state, or, and that was one of his hardest things, is like actually like trying to like push somebody over the edge of death is a lot harder than you would imagine. Yeah,
that is a surprising aspect of all of this.
Yeah. Anyways, incredible stuff. I like your dad's new documentary, that Chaos documentary, was also really good, because he's also done the Wormwood stuff about like CIA's MK Ultra and all this stuff. Did you like help him at all with any of this stuff? I'm sure like your guys' interests are very much intertwined.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did. I was involved with the Chaos production in various ways from the beginning, and it's an interesting story. It's, I think that the book is very good. I even read a manuscript of it long before it was published. I'm not sure that I am persuaded by the book's thesis, but I still think it's very interesting and provocative.
Yeah, he didn't have like a there was a thesis, but there wasn't like any conclusion, right? He had like, I think he ended it with like 3 or 4 different conclusions of like why they were murdered.
Right. I should maybe be a little bit, I do agree with aspects of, there's maybe two theses in this. One is that the story of the Manson killings, as they are typically portrayed, is flawed and incomplete and has inconsistencies. That I would agree with. But the bigger thing that I think most people are actually interested in is the possibility that Charles Manson was some kind of Manchurian candidate who was programmed by the CIA. Yeah. And that he's not claiming that is definitively the case, but that is sort of the subject of the book, is attempting to identify
to bridge
that
the gap
possibility.
Yeah, sure. And he did point out, and he found like solid evidence that clinic in Haight-Ashbury did have CIA funding, and they were doing like crazy testing with, I think it was LSD mixed with amphetamines, and seeing how that affected people. And then that guy Jolly West was visiting there all the time, and then the connection with Manson and his followers going there every single week. It's just, you can't draw any like solid conclusions out of that, but the connections are bizarre. That the fact that they were doing that stuff and he was there every week.
medium bizarre, I would say.
Medium bizarre.
Yeah, because I mean, and I say this as someone that
What?
I've interviewed David E. Smith, who's the founder of the Haight-Ashbury.
Oh,
Free
really?
Clinic. Yeah, he was in the PCP episode of my show.
Okay.
So I've known him and followed his work for most of my adult life. He's a very influential psychedelic researcher. He created what was once called the Journal of Psychedelic Drugs, which was the premier peer-reviewed scholarly journal dedicated to research on psychedelics. It was later renamed the Journal of Psychoactive Drugs, but it's a big journal. And so it's not surprising to me that one of the preeminent researchers on psychedelics was doing psychedelic research. There's nothing, and that he's in Haight-Ashbury, which is the center of this entire hippie movement,
Sure.
and that he's providing free medical care to impoverished people in that community. Again, not really surprising to me. He was treating enormous numbers of people. So I do think that it's very easy, and I fall into these sorts of patterns of thinking myself. I say this, I'm not saying this like you're stupid if you think this way. But it's very easy when you're scrutinizing historical documents to look selectively at what suits the narrative that you're trying to present to the public, and to not critically assess alternate possibilities. And I know this very well. I've spent a lot of time looking at World War II psychedelic research, and wouldn't it be interesting if the Nazis knew about LSD, like, for example?
Right.
So I'm already operating from a perspective of, wouldn't it be interesting if the Nazis knew about LSD? So anything I look at, I'm hoping that it will support that. Meanwhile, it's very easy to ignore large amounts of evidence that don't support
Gross.
that. And it's just a critical thinking exercise in general. I know it's less fun to talk the way that I'm talking. Like, I'm sympathetic to the funness of exploring these ideas, but more and more as I see our culture fractured by delusions of one kind or another and a lack of critical thinking skills, I feel less sympathetic to the playful, non-critical reinterpretation of the world, like using the world as this kind of fanfic canvas to paint whatever narrative that you want. I mean, that's one of the nice things about fiction, is you can explore these ideas and you don't need to pretend that they are true. Whereas I feel like there's a tendency where people use these same sorts of idea, like what a fiction writer might do, but they project it onto reality. And this is like the new way that people tell stories.
Yes, it makes it more fun, I think. And then when you combine it with social media, it's kind of like throwing gasoline on fire. And then when you also combine that with, like, these sensational headlines or narratives that you can come up with and post on social media, they organically get more eyeballs and more attention because you're attracting more people, right? People that are less, they don't think as critically. And on top of that, then you have people making careers out of this stuff, out of like taking these things and just running with them.
Oh yeah.
So it's like a compounding thing that is like, it seems like it's completely gotten out of control. And I don't know how it ever, I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the tube. And this kind of goes, you talked about this a little bit with Rick Strassman on your podcast when you guys were talking about telepathy and like brain chips. Like, what if people could communicate just telepathically and there was no filter?
This game really fucking sucks, dude.
You eloquently stated how, like, that would be terrible because people would not be able to edit what they're thinking. Like, typically when you write, you have to like go through what you're writing and refine it so you can have the most coherent message and communicate authentically what your intentions are. But if you're just having this chaos of thought confusion in your head being transferred into somebody else, then there's going to be like an insane level of miscommunication happening. And that's like what's going on with social media, I feel like.
Yeah, and it requires so much work to undo some kind of falsity that's been propagated that you can just totally lose track of reality.
Like, will you just fucking cooperate?
I think that it is
piece of shit.
You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. I think that culturally we can develop an appreciation for carefully constructed ideas that are responsibly bounded by the limits of evidence. And when you have something like that, then it's all the more interesting because it's real. You're not playing games with imaginary ideas. Like, and again, I say this as someone who is extremely sympathetic to the excitement. Like, I can't tell you how many of these things I've had myself. One that I've been looking at for years, it's very fringe, is this idea that astrology has been weaponized by the government, right?
Hey guys, if you're not already subscribed, please hammer the subscribe button below and hit the like button on the video. Back to the show.
And there is some evidence for this, right? And you can even make a case that is evidence-based but somewhat tenuous, that the entire Reagan administration war on drugs was astrologically mediated.
How?
Yeah, it's pretty wild, where you have Nancy Reagan was an actress, was a kind of low-level actress, and a sort of like a character who is sort of analogous to Melania Trump in a lot of ways, where she wasn't taken seriously. Everybody's making fun of her. She's not like a Michelle Obama type person who has political ambitions, who, you know, is using her role to disseminate ideas that are constructive. She spends something like $40,000 getting a new set of china.
Hello, Erie Buckner.
Everybody makes fun of her ruthlessly, and this is where our taxpayer money is going, and how frivolous and how stupid. And so she's having this PR crisis, and she's also really into astrology. Both her and Ronald Reagan are really into astrology, and they have an astrologer named Joan Quigley. And this is a fact, this is like a 100% established fact. In the midst of this PR crisis, she's consulting with Joan Quigley about what to do. And Joan Quigley tells her, which is probably pretty good PR advice, you need a mission. You need something that you can bring to the American people that will show that you are concerned. And your mission, because Neptune is in the 12th house, will be America's struggle with drugs. Right. So this is like...
Are you a toad alt?
Unfathomable human suffering.
Are you a toad alt, Erie Buckner?
Borderline random astrological whim. And when you add to that...
Welcome to the stream, Erie Buckner.
Bits and pieces of evidence. There's a CIA whistleblower named Miles Copeland who wrote in a book called The Game Player about the CIA using astrology computers that have been compromised by the government to deliver disinformation to foreign heads of state.
Yo, what's up, play poker? How are you, man?
This astrology computer to the president of Ghana, and you say, enjoy. And the output of the computer...
Sorry to hear that, Erie Buckner.
...aligned with U.S. interests.
It's never right to ghost anybody.
Organize a coup.
You should always...
So there are all these, like...
You should always tell the person you're not going to contact them again.
It's very difficult to corroborate all of this. Maybe he's making it up, but what a weird thing to make up. On top of that...
Astrology computer, I've never even heard of that.
Yeah. And there was a bizarrely large amount of resources that were actually invested into astrology computers during that period in the 1970s, including military funding. Again, so, okay, yeah, it's pretty wild. So I actually have the astrology computer, the Digicomp DR70 astrology mini computer that arguably is responsible for the war on drugs. There it is right there. It's a beaut.
Wow, the one on the left?
Yeah, the one on the left. Yeah.
Blow that thing up. That's crazy. Where did you get that?
Thanks, man.
I got it from Nancy Reagan's astrologer's astrologer.
That's great to hear, dude.
That's the best story I've ever heard.
It's got an ignition, like a car. You put a key in the computer to turn it on, to rev that bad boy.
Damn.
Yeah.
How many gears is that thing? That's so crazy, dude.
But anyway, so this is an example. Like, I'm very, very interested in this idea. I've probably collected every little bit of evidence. And is it possible? Yeah,
that's
it's
good, man.
Definitely possible. It's possible it played a role. It's possible there's more to it. You could make an argument that the Reagan administration war on drugs was astrologically mediated, but At what point is this factual? At what point is this ignoring real factors that were going into this? At what point am I doing it because it's funny and interesting? And so you have to be self-aware and you have to be responsible about these things because it's so easy to manipulate people.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've always been acutely aware of it in the realm of psychedelic journalism. I mean, this is like one of the areas where journalistic failure is the norm, right? It is the exception if a journalist isn't failing miserably in their coverage of drugs. We're just
Good, man.
used to that.
I'm good, man. Thank you.
Well, maybe if anything. Well, I mean, yeah, you could.
Doing well.
That would be maybe a slightly more cynical interpretation, but yeah, journalists often don't do that well. They do. It's a hard job to be sympathetic to a very unsympathetic occupation. It's a hard job, but they've done a really bad job with drugs, and they continue to do an unbelievably terrible job. But what's interesting is we tend not to notice the way these manipulations play out until a decade or so has passed. Like, you look back at the scare stories of the past, and it's literally laughable. It's a joke. Ha ha ha.
Right.
Your brain on drugs. How stupid was this? Oh, ecstasy makes holes in your brains. How stupid is this? All these things. You know, I had this huge archive of news reports on MDMA, and you have, like, you know, cops like lecturing other cops about, like, oh, this is a pacifier. Like, the MDMA user puts the pacifier in their mouth to enhance the drug pleasures that they experience. It's all just like nuts. But the same thing's happening now. We just are worse at noticing it until a little time has passed. So whatever the dominant narrative is, and I guess crucially, before I even get into the examples, because the issue is that these narratives are so dominant that people haven't even started to question them yet. And often
It's second nature, I would say, brother.
Brain damage narrative that was the sort of scientific orientation of the 90s. It's potentially true, right? Like, under some, like, drugs can damage your brain under some circumstances.
Right.
For a typical person, holes in their brain is not really the major concern. It's more like disruption of their social and professional and educational existence through dependence on a substance that probably isn't, in most instances, causing irreversible neurological damage, but it can still have very negative manifestations of one kind or another. So now we went through this era of, like, a hyper-reductionist conceptualization of addiction problems in the United States. So the entire opioid problem in the United States can be exclusively tracked to Richard Sackler, right? Yeah. It's just, that's it. That's the whole thing. It's like,
right.
It's very convenient. Wouldn't it be nice? Right. It sure would be nice if it were that simple. If you could blame everything on Richard Sackler.
One billionaire,
Yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. That's why all those people died. Just one guy.
Yeah.
But it's like, give me a break. He definitely played a role. I'm not saying it's completely false.
Yeah.
But it's such a laughably reductionist understanding of human motivations for drug use that I struggle to understand how any adult who has lived in the real world could think it is truly that simple, right? It's like the basic idea that I think people struggle with is that they think drugs are responsible for drug problems, which is a very superficial read. Of course they are, strictly speaking, but the reality is that to even get to a point where you want to hurt yourself with a drug, or you're willing to develop a problematic relationship with a drug, there's usually some kind of social, psychological problem that is putting you in that position to begin with.
Yeah.
So just merely having like you offered me kratom at the beginning of this podcast, and I declined the kratom, right? Why did I decline the kratom?
Because you know a lot more about kratom than I do.
Well, I'm not even saying that kratom is bad. That's not the point. But the point is that I'm aware of it.
It's addictive?
Yeah, people become dependent on it, definitely, yeah. Which in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I'm very dependent on caffeine. So
Right.
So dependence in and of itself is not necessarily bad, although I would argue it's not.
I can't remember a day in the last 10 years that I have. I mean, there's been, in the last 10 years, I could probably count on two hands how many days I've gone without a cup of coffee. not
All
many.
right, bros. I
like,
think
heard
I'm
talking
gonna
about
go
that
out,
was
enjoy the day.
a thing. Maybe
Sorry,
Greg,
I know I
that's
started stream, but
Right.
you know,
I'm gonna go out, enjoy the day.
So I know this
I
shit's amazing.
apologize.
It is so much
I
better.
think I'm
than
gonna do that.
caffeine.
Right.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. Appreciate you.
I mean, what